The year is 1942. Japan has reached the height of her power. She's advancing southward. Bombs are no longer falling on places you've never heard of. They're falling on Darwin. Australia has been attacked. On the 15th of April, the American submarine base was established at New Farm. Some Americans had arrived earlier, but more were on their way. On the 20th of July of the same year, US General Douglas MacArthur, who had been made Commander-in-Chief of the whole Southwest Pacific area, makes Brisbane his headquarters, meaning that Brisbane is fast becoming a target. In order to fix the gaping hole that was in Brisbane's defences, they chose the southern tip of Bribie Island. Now this town, Wirram, had been newly evacuated. So they build this, Fort Skirmish and RAND Station number 4, which houses top secret technology. No one can know about this. Because RAND Station number 4, out of the two bases that were based in Wirram, is the most intact, I thought I'd show you where it is and why it's important, and then we'll go and find what's left of Fort Skirmish and where the rest of it used to be and why it's no longer there anymore. In order to find the first part of RAND Station number 4, you want to come to Rotary Park, and you'll come into this area here, and you'll find this building just here. Now this thing here was a generator. RAND Station number 4 had two types of submarine and ship detecting equipment. The first was the Harbour Defence ASDIC, which was the British form of sonar. These fired high-frequency sound pulses. When these pings hit a submerged object, they would bounce back in the form of an echo, and this is how enemy vessels would be detected. This next bit of equipment was utterly top secret. No one could know. If this did get out, not just Brisbane's defences could be breached, but Darwin's, Fremantle's, Sydney's and Newcastle's, and a great number of others across the world. Now the only reason we are able to know any of this information is because of the work of Dr. Richard Walding and historian Peter Dunn over at Oz at War, and a small handful of others who I'll reference to in the description. Now, this secret technology was indicator loops, which would be laid on the seabed in a special configuration. These cables would then pick up the natural magnetism of submarines and ships that passed over them, tripping a meter within the loop control hut. Now, crazy thing is, when these loops and ASDICs were being installed under code name Robert and Arthur, Japan attacks again, and this time they breach Sydney Harbour's defences. So yeah, I should have said, now you walk up this path here to get to the next building, and then you come through this sand track here, and what you're left with is the control room, which went out into where the indicator loops would lead out from here and across towards Moreton Island. Now this thing was the mother of all defences. This thing, the cables went 16 kilometres out into the sea. Let me show you. So unfortunately some idiot has wrecked the sign with graffiti, but in here was the artificer's workshop, so like repairs and stuff would be done in that. Then there was the indicator loop room. People would be sitting in there all day looking at the loop instruments, making sure nothing. So if something went through these loops, it would come up with like a waveform on the instruments. Then there was the HDA room, which is where they'd be looking at the sonar. The observation room, so they'd have also they would have someone manning a telescope or binoculars who would constantly be scanning the horizon from here. Then there was the wireless telegraphy room. So what would happen here is anything that was found with any of these things would be wired back to the defensive structures further along. So if an enemy vessel came in, the battery down there would be ready to shoot them. And then there was the officer's toilet. Apparently the officer's toilet was so much better than the rating toilet. Like this toilet was just, it was porcelain, and this was absolutely dreadful. But imagine being in here, having to stare at these wall-mounted instruments all day. apparently, I reckon that would be the most boring thing in the world. Now, I mentioned Sydney being attacked. Now, the thing is that Sydney actually had indicator loops as well. And they believe the reason that the midget submarines got through was that the indicator loops may have been laid in a way that they didn't actually quite pick them up. The other thing is, the people who were manning these stations in Sydney were complacent. And that's how these things slipped through. The people who were sent here were men who had had experience with being attacked by the Japanese. So I suppose these men were not complacent at all. They did their job and they took it very seriously. What I find really sad is how badly these places are defaced, and like no one seems to realise their value. Or if they do, look at this. I mean, we have to lock these things up to protect them from Australian citizens, because unfortunately our people seem to want to just graffiti the living crap out of them. It's really, really sad. I mean, we've lost all of Fort Wirram. We've lost all of the skirmish battery. It's all gone, as I'll show you. And we're losing this because of idiots. Look at this, it's all been smashed in. Someone's trying to get into a window. You can come through here. It's all smashed in here. I mean, how long until we lose these things for good just because of idiots needing to destroy our heritage and culture? That's quite sad, remarkably sad. But yeah, so now our third and final structure is along here too. So you want to come down this track here, and then you'll want to come over here along this sandy trail and turn north. And you'll find another building. It'd be quite easy not to see it at all, actually. So you want to come across here, walk down here. We want to walk up this path and across this car park to here. Then you'll come to this gate, and if you lead through here, you'll find this other structure over here, and this is the northern generator. So, once again, it's had to be locked up because we have to protect it from morons who want to destroy it. But yeah, this was another generator that was in here. I'd love to go inside these buildings. I think they'd be absolutely fabulous to have a look at. Ah, this is what it is. This is all that's left of this place. So yeah, there's these two generators that powered RAN Station number 4. Now that we've found RAN Station number 4, the secret base, let's go and find the lost battery. Now, in order to find this fort, this lost fort, we're going to need to use this map. So, according to our map, it would have been in this area here somewhere that our first coastal artillery searchlight would have been. And so it would have beamed out here looking for surface craft or, you know, perhaps the tops of a submarine that was coming through the top. If it was like on the surface, perhaps they'd see the periscope and stuff like that. Anyway, let's go and find the rest of this thing, shall we? Now, according to our map, the battery command post would have been located in this vicinity somewhere. So it's on the end, if we see on the map here, it's on the end of 5th Avenue. So yeah, it would have been in this area somewhere. Anyway, let's continue. Our next gun should be along here somewhere. Now, if we look at our map, we'll find that this was the location of the number 2 gun. So what was sitting here was a concrete base, and on top of that sat a 155mm gun. These things were actually a relic from the First World War, and they were given to us by the Americans. So that thing sat in here, and its arc of fire, it covered the channel. What these guns actually were guarding, realistically, was the Pearl Channel. So if anything was to try and come through the Pearl Channel, these guns would blow them to pieces. If we look along here on the map, we see a couple of other buildings. Now they were found over in between 6th Avenue and in between 5th Avenue and in between 4th Avenue. So there was this little square here. Now it doesn't say what it is on the map, which is kind of annoying. Next there were tanks, so I'm guessing that's water. Then there was the mess that was in between here. Now these areas would all be near people's houses, and that's why I'm not filming there. Then there was this thing in the middle of the road. This is what's known as a battery plotting room. So this would work in conjunction with these two guns. So if something was to enter the bay and the guns were to fire at it, the battery plotting room would tell them what angles they needed to aim at, the angle which they should aim, or the elevation, all of that good stuff would be calculated in the battery plotting room. So that's what that did. Yeah, so it was in the middle of the road along North Street. Anyway, let's get up to these guns. Now, if we look at our map, number 1 gun emplacement was here. Now, once again, it sat on a concrete base. It was a 1917 155 millimeter gun on borrow from America. And it sat on this base, and its arc of fire, once again, was the Pearl Channel out here in front of Bribie Island. But once again, like the other gun that was located further up, all of these things were interconnected. Anything that went past RAN station number 4 and was picked up by the sonar or the indicator loops would be telegraphed down here. Then the guns would proceed to fire. Now these guns were never fired in anger. But here's the question, did Fort Skirmish do anything famous? Did anything famous actually happen here? Well, yeah. Now apparently what happened during 1943, the observationists, they saw a terrific bang, an explosion lit up the sky out there near Moreton Island. And what it actually was the sinking of the hospital ship. See, a hospital ship was torpedoed by the Japanese. And they saw the explosion from this fort, and they radioed back to High Command what they'd seen. Nothing was done about it, of course, and it was one of the worst tragedies in this area's maritime history. But that's a story for another time. Now, according to our map, the last structure would be somewhere along up here. And once again, it was a coastal artillery searchlight. And once again, it worked in conjunction with everything up there. Now, our map doesn't show it, but apparently further down, 1 kilometre down from here, was a forward observation post, and it was elevated up a long way. It was like 10 meters up, and they would observe this area. They'd have spotters in there all the time. Unfortunately, it met the same demise as everything else that was in Fort Skirmish. And the question is, what happened to Fort Skirmish? Why is it not here anymore? What happened to it after the war? So, after the Second World War, so this place was abandoned in 1944, and the army took most of what had value. They just took it. Then, after that, in the 50s, people ended up taking and making these places into like holiday homes and whatnot. And, well, they were useful until around the 60s or 70s. Well, they fell into the sea. They eroded. All the sand around these fortifications washed away, and unfortunately they became unsafe. So in about 1970s, they demolished this place, and that's why it's no longer here. Today, next to the first generator of the RAN station, all that is left of the south side of Fort Skirmish are the footings of the southern forward observation post. But wait, are you implying that there's still something left? Well, maybe. See, after I shot this, I was told that there was a northern forward observation post, which was part of this fort 4.7 kilometres to the north. So I searched for it until I ran out of light, But just because I didn't find it doesn't mean it's not there. Anyway, please like, share and subscribe. And whilst you're at it, go over to Oz at War's site and Richard Walding's. Now, the pair of them are YouTubers, and I reckon we should show them some love as well. So I've linked them down in the description with the references. So go and check them out, show them some love. Anyway, cheerio, off to other adventures. Bye.